All right, up next is Ari Kellerman. Now, I have a little story about Ari. Ari connected with me, I don't know, must be 6 or 8 weeks ago, probably something like that. Him and I have tried to actually meet in person every other week until like today. This is the first time I've actually met Ari. I've actually spoken to him, had Zoom calls. So I'm happy to have Ari here. Ari's going to talk to us about strategy. And Ari, before he does that, he's going to answer his 3 questions. So Ari, what's your favorite movie?
So I thought about this one for a little bit, decided to go safe with Shawshank Redemption. Because it's one of those movies that every time it's on, and in the States it was on a lot, always watched it. So I'll go with that one.
All right. And where's your favorite vacation spot?
So unfortunately, not unfortunately, but I used to answer this question always with Israel. I moved here in August, so it's a little harder to say that now. I have to be more specific. What I'd say now is it's probably still Israel, but I have to refine that answer a bit to maybe somewhere more specific, like a city or a specific location.
That's not an answer.
I'll say Jerusalem.
Jerusalem, okay. I spent Hanukkah in Jerusalem with my kids, and I survived. What do you like to eat when you're driving?
So anything with chocolate or peanut butter. The risk there, of course, is getting your hands all dirty, so it has to be in a wrapper. But chocolate or peanut butter, especially together.
So, like, no peanut butter cups, but the Hershey's peanut butter bar, that's the winner.
That's a good one.
That's the
Got
winner.
the wrapper, you don't get your hands all slimy. It's very important.
All right.
Spend a lot of time in rental cars, you don't want to get them all gross.
Exactly. Okay, great. Thanks very much. So, strategy, for those of you who don't know what strategy is, Ari's going to tell us all about it.
Thank you, Blair. Thank you to the organizers of the conference, Cow and Plugged In. I appreciate the opportunity to get up here in front of you and talk. Happy New Year to everybody, those who recognize this. It's my first year now, as I mentioned. I moved here in August, so my first year living in Israel for New Year's. It's funny that it's just a day on the calendar. Very different feeling than it is in the States, so I'm still getting used to some of those things. But thank you very much. I appreciate that everyone came out here and isn't too hungover from last night. So as Blair mentioned, I work in strategy. I work at Blue Canyon Partners. I guarantee no one here has ever heard of them. If you have, I think you're probably thinking of someone else. Someone else with a color and a geographic feature in their name. Green River, Purple Mountain, there's a lot of us. But Blue Canyon actually is a management consulting firm. And curious which one of these everyone fits into. Most people probably fit into one of these, is what your perception of management consulting is. You'll notice some of the references here are a little dated. This meme goes back a few years. But a lot of people think we're like the people in Office Space who come in and ask you what you do and fire people, and we're all about coming in and right-sizing organizations. My mom, my grandparents thought I'm the guy traveling around the world, up in the air, trying to collect those air miles. Did that for quite some time. One of the reasons I moved to Israel is to stop traveling, except that now I go back to the States every month. So that didn't work out so well. A lot of people think of management consultants as money hungry, or just charging money for things that you already know how to do, or just collecting your money. There's a famous critique of management consultants where they say, we take your watch and tell you what time it is. We don't do that. There are definitely people who do that. At Blue Canyon, we don't do that. We're more about working together to come to solutions, but that is certainly something that we hear a lot in the marketplace. And of course, coming out of business school, when a lot of friends went into CPG or marketing or things like that, they all thought we were just jet setting around the world and private planes and business class and lounges, etc. So some elements of all of those things are true. None of them are true in their entirety. So what do we actually do? What is Blue Canyon? What is management consulting? So a bit about Blue Canyon, then I'll start talking about actual useful material for all of you. So we're a management consulting firm that provides specifically business-to-business help on growth strategy. So very specific, very targeted towards, again, B2B and growth strategy. Show of hands here, who here is in the B2B space? Most of you, excellent. Okay, so this will resonate a little more. B2C is obviously a lot of commonalities, but a lot of differences as well. And of course, B2G in other areas as well, but B2B is what we focus on entirely. I come from 12 years of consulting, a couple other firms before this, big firms, broader, not just B2B, not just growth strategy, but now focusing only on B2B and only on growth strategy, but run the gamut on industries, small to big. Currently, I have a few clients. One is number 2 in the industry in the world in their space, in agriculture equipment. One is making steel pipes and They're not even on the map in terms of world focus. So all over the map in terms of size, but we are focusing on B2B, helping firms with their strategic direction and helping them grow. And growth can come all kinds of forms. It can be market entry, it could be adjacency, it can be product, it can be sales, operations. Everybody's looking to grow. We help them with all those different issues they might be challenged with, things that they're working on, things they're trying to solve. And of course, as we talk about growth strategy and as we help companies grow and figure out how to grow, there's an inextricable link with sales, obviously. The way you grow, one of the ways you grow at least, is to boost your sales. So we're always brought into those conversations on sales. And people are always saying, okay, great, I have a wonderful strategy now. I know where I want to target. I know who I'm going after. I know which market I want to go after. But how do I do it? How do I make that approach? What's my plan for sales? Who am I going after? What am I saying to them? How am I structuring my organization? Do I have the right salespeople? Do I have them focused in the right areas? All those questions are very much tied to growth strategy, and it's why we're brought in a lot of the times to talk about sales and talk about sales execution. So, Winston Churchill said, however beautiful the strategy, you should occasionally look at the results. It's obviously, as a lot of things that are quoted often from Winston Churchill, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's imperative that you understand even the best strategies, the execution's what's really going to get you the dollar and going to make you the money. You have to make sure that the grandest strategies have the right underpinnings and have the right support to them, and that you're not just laying on your sitting on your laurels and saying, "Oh, I have a great product, I have a great strategy. This is going to be the Uber of this, or this is going to be the disruptor of Amazon." Right? It's important that you have that structural underneath what you have as your strategy to make sure that you are able to execute and that you are able to carry forward that great strategy that you had. So we're thinking about how this works. You start with your market and customer insights. You understand your market. You understand this product is going to solve some problem for your customers. Okay, great. You know there's a huge market, Brazil. We just heard about Brazil. Brazil's a great market, tons of consumers, really digital adopters. Wonderful. I think it's a great market. How am I going to grow? I'm going to enter Brazil. I'm going to work with a partnership. I'm going to have an intermediary because I don't speak Portuguese or I don't know the market that well. So I'm going to build my strategy of how I'm going to grow into Brazil, or maybe it's a land and expand. I'll get one customer, they'll talk about me nicely, and I'll build into that. Wonderful. You have your strategy, then you start execution. Like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. This is my 1 year, my 3 year, my 5 year plan. This is how I'm going to get into my market. But then, of course, you have all your great plans, you have all your great strategies. What do you have to do? You have to start with your sales planning. And this entire top of the circle that we're going to get into here is this is the go-to-market strategy. Lots of different forms of this. I'm sure you've seen 100 different versions of this. This is the way we look at it, but it's not, I'd say, totally unique to anything that we do, but this is how we look at the go-to-market strategy. But then once you've done with all the planning and you have your go-to-market strategy, you understand what you're going to do, how are you going to do it, and where are you going to do it, you have to start getting into, okay, tactics. How do I get to the market? How do I now build that strategy and really deploy it? So I do my sales deployment. I need all the tools and processes, and whether it be enterprise software, your CRM, your HubSpots, all those things that you need in place to make sure that you're able to execute, make sure that you have what you need. And of course, with any cycle, you need to constantly, especially in today's world of big data, and I have a client now who makes agriculture equipment. They are very much a heavy, heavy iron company. They think in terms of take iron, make equipment, sell equipment, wash, rinse, repeat. They came to us and they said, we know this equipment's making a ton of data. What do we do with it? So even in an industry that's old, they're over 100 years old, and they, in the past, hadn't thought much about data, hadn't thought much about measurement and understanding how to take that information back into their cycle and help them develop new equipment, help them develop new sales tactics, help them support their dealership. That is becoming more and more crucial with every day, with IoT, with big data, all this stuff being produced. You need to make sure that everything you're doing is being measured, is being monitored, and of course what gets measured gets done. So you have to make sure that with sales you're also measuring and monitoring and understanding what you're doing. So that's the bottom half of that is what we're calling the get to market. So understanding we have this great plan, we understand where we're going to go, how we're going to get there, and this is how we're going to do it. But, excuse me. Cyclical, of course, you constantly want to be feeding that information back into your cycle, making sure that you're learning from what you're doing, and making sure that it feeds back into, okay, I now have new insights, therefore it feeds back in. These three pieces on the right here, this is really what I think most of the people in the room are focused on most of the time. What we call, this is our sales effectiveness part of the cycle. So of course we have our sales planning, as I mentioned, who we're going after, making sure that everything's aligned with our marketing plan, making sure that our sales strategy is all lined up, because that link between your strategy and your sales is obviously crucial. And it's extremely important that you make sure that you are linking all of your sales activity, all of your sales structure, all of your organization, your team, making sure they're focused, and that it's coming back to that strategy up there. Making sure that we are still thinking about the strategy as we're deploying this, making sure we're always coming back and saying, wait, does this align? Does this make sense? Will this get us to our goal? Deployment, making sure we have the right people. And I want to be clear that when I'm talking about today and when I'm talking about when we're in the next couple slides talking about the diagnostic, I'm not saying that your people are necessarily an issue. I'm not saying that you don't have the right folks. Most of the time, and what we found in our experience, it's not necessarily the people, it's the tools and support that they have to deliver on their job. Salespeople are great. You give them a set of structures and tools and rules to follow, and they'll maximize that effort. I've dealt with a lot of excellent salespeople who can really do a great job, but they need the right tools and support in there. And making sure that you understand that they have the right underpinnings, they're able to do their job. A lot of times the question comes down to, I titled the slide business issue. So when there is an issue, the question is it the strategy or is it the execution? And what we found is there's definitely a healthy mix of both. You have plenty of companies that have flawed strategies and therefore can't execute, and you have plenty of companies who have great strategies but are not able to execute. And then I've even had companies who are great executors, but they don't have what to do with it. So there's a lot of variations of those. So I wouldn't say that it's one or the other, and it's definitely not an indictment on sales folks. There are some excellent salespeople out there who still aren't successful because, again, they don't have the sales effectiveness tools and processes to support them. So we're going to talk now about the sales effectiveness. Okay, therefore, great. I have an issue. I know there's an issue. I'm not selling, or my revenue is declining, or something's not working. How do I go about understanding what that is? How do I go about diagnosing what some of the issue is? So we have what we call the sales effectiveness framework. Again, like other things, and I'm a consultant, so you probably expected at least one framework. But we look at it this way. You've probably, again, seen things like this from other companies, other people who've talked about this. So just the way we look at it, it's not, again, novel or unique to us. But you start with our sales strategy, as we mentioned, from the bottom right of that circle on the prior slide. We have a great sales strategy. We're going to go after this market. We're going to. This is our value proposition. This is how we're going to sell to them. This is how we're going to tie their need to our product. You always want to try to identify what problem am I solving, of course. So trying to have that sales strategy and making sure that it's supported by your market understandings, back from the first box I had on the prior. Making sure that you have that value proposition that is articulated. Making sure you have your pricing right. Something we're working on a lot now is pricing of IoT. I don't know if in Israel maybe this is more developed, but what we're found in the States is that a lot of companies don't know how to do it. It's new to the space, obviously. They don't know whether they should be doing a SaaS-based model, whether they should be doing a subscription-based model, whether they should be doing product-based. So there's all kinds of questions about how to price IoT. Just the newest and latest thing that people are having trouble with. Obviously, pricing challenges are not something new, even for old world product companies. And of course, you want to make sure that you have your targeted segments. It could be geographies, it could be verticals, it could be industries, whatever. However you want to segment your customers, make sure you understand that you have segmentation done. Then, of course, once you have your sales strategy, how am I going to structure my team? Am I going to verticalize? Am I going to divide by segments? Am I going to have regionalized salespeople? Am I selling only in one place? Therefore, I'm thinking about it in terms of micro territories. So in the U.S., of course, there's a lot of different ways to attack the U.S. One client we have now is Midwest-based, and they were looking to get in the Southeast. So we help them understand what that is. And sitting in Israel, I don't always think about the U.S. as lots of different places. But of course, there's a lot of regions within the U.S. that have very different needs. Especially in this case, this client is an agriculture company. Drainage in the Midwest is very different than drainage in the Southeast or Southwest, where there just isn't as much water. So things like that, you have to think about how you're going to attack your sales, how you're going to structure your sales team, how many people you're going to use, what each of them is going to do. Do you have a stratified structure? Of course, with Israel, with startups, it's not so much about a sales organization. It's more about a sales guy or a sales gal or sales team, a little bit smaller in scope. But, of course, there's also multinationals that operate in Israel as well. So thinking about what the structure and roles you have of the salespeople, how they're covering your territory, how they're going to execute on your sales strategy. Once you have all that set up, you talk about your customer engagement, making sure you have the processes, back to relationships that Claudia talked about, making sure that we have those processes well defined. We're doing consultative selling. So we're not just coming to them and being transactional and saying, I have something, do you want to buy it? It's more, what need can I help you solve? How can I help you achieve your goals? And how can I help you by providing you something that will help you do your jobs better? Something that I've always challenged with when I'm in my years of management consulting is describing in very short order what I do. And the best way I found to do this is to talk to my kids. So growing up, my kids have always wondered what I did when they were in kindergarten. They used to write on papers, oh, what does your dad do? He works on a computer. Great. I think we all do that. So the best way I thought of describing what I do and frankly what you have to do for your customers or your clients is help them do their jobs better. That's what I do. I come into a company, I figure out what their problems are, I work with them to help them do their jobs better. So making sure that you're doing that as part of your sales process. Once you have all that under, again, the structural infrastructure set up and making sure you have everything in place, you have to have your right people, the right skills. It's not just about the having everything in place. If you can't execute with the right people, they don't have the skills you need in order to sell your product, that's not going to go anywhere. Making sure that they're continually developing, making sure that they are, in fact, building their skills as they go along. And of course, as with any sales structure, sales effectiveness, make sure you have the right motivations, make sure you are incentivizing the right activities. You want to make sure that the program is set up such that what you're asking of them is what you want them to do. It sounds rather simple, rather straightforward, but the program you set up is what you're going to get done. So making sure that you have the right motivation and incentives, and again, making sure it's all lined back to the sales strategy. So everything you're doing on the motivation and incentives should be supporting your goals of selling more product to the right people, to the right places. Under all that and supporting everything we have there is, of course, your sales ops, and that's the tools, processes, CRM, et cetera, all the things that you need in place in order to support all of that wonderful work you're doing up top. So then, a brief example here I'm going to go through of something we did for a client, how we diagnosed sales effectiveness at this client. Again, they were looking to expand within the U.S. They were having trouble with their sales team. It wasn't quite working. Again, it wasn't the people they were concerned about. It was they didn't think the good people they had were able to be effective with the way that they were set up. So we went through each of these, and I'm not going to drain the whole thing. It was about a 12-week project, and it's been multiple phases, and each one of these has a lot of detail behind it. But we went through each of the 6 elements, and for each of them, we talked about how are they doing in that element, what does it look like to be good, quote unquote, and how are they stacking up against that good measure. And for each of those, we had to think about, so for customer engagement, an example here, what are the key questions we have to answer in customer engagement? What do we need to understand? Do they have a well-defined sales process? Do they have a standardized account planning process? Do they give their salespeople a clear customer targeting plan? Who should they go after? What's their value proposition? How are they targeting those people? So going through each of these elements and understanding, are they doing the right things in order to accomplish, again, their key goal and sales strategy? And then, is their sales process aligned with the customer buying process? There are obviously different processes that are very much aligned, where we have to make sure that we are assessing the needs of the company when they're doing their discovery. We have to make sure that our value proposition is useful to them when they're evaluating options. So are we providing the right level of value for what they need as they're thinking about what they are looking to buy? We're all sales folks. Even I'm the only person I think who's speaking today who doesn't have sales in their title. But of course, I'm also a salesperson, looking to sell our services to other people. Are we designing the right offering, product, service, whatever it is we're selling? Do we have the right thing for the company that is evaluating their options? So going through this whole process and making sure that our process of our sales process is aligned well with the customer buying process. Because as, again, Claudia, and thank you for going first, it gives me a lot of stuff to work with. As Claudia was saying, you have to meet them where they are. You have to really understand what they're looking for and making sure that what you're providing is actually going to be helpful to them. So I got the little warning, so I'll wrap up. But so key takeaways, and this is, of course, much shorter than a full treatment on this. So key takeaways I want you to remember from today. There's lots of ways to fail, unfortunately. It can be from a flawed strategy. It can be from faulty implementation. Again, I've seen examples of both. I've seen examples of interesting combinations of both. But at the end of the day, what you have to do is understand that you have to root cause analysis. What's going on? Why are we failing? Do a diagnosis. Go through that process, or any process that is structured and organized, to understand what are we doing either in our go-to-market part, so understanding our markets and who we're going after and how we're going after, or in our get-to-market of understanding how we're implementing our tools, our technologies, our people, our processes, and understand where the failures are happening, why we're failing, and going through that process. And of course, you want to do that diagnostic to take an objective look. And that's why it's helpful sometimes to do this with outside help, because someone will come in and say, well, you think you're doing it this way, you think you're effective, but we talked to a dozen of your customers and they have no idea what you're doing. We had a customer who was making specialty furniture, and they are the recognized leader in their space. They invented the space. Everyone says their products are great, but their sales folks, and this is not the people who work for them, but this is a two-step distribution, so this is retailers who are selling their products, weren't able to clearly articulate their value proposition. They knew their products were great. Anytime anyone used their products, they had great things to say about it, but they weren't able to clearly explain to customers why they should pay the premium for this company's product when there's a guy making similar product or good enough product coming from China that they could buy for 40% of the price. So being able to understand where you're failing, and in that case we help them with their value proposition articulation, we help them with their reseller management, all different areas we could help them with, but really understanding the nuts and bolts of what's going wrong and how you could be better. So again, very short treatment of a long topic. Happy to answer any questions now, later. You'll all have my contact information. So thank you again for letting me come out today.
Any questions?
Don't be shy. I don't bite it usually.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. So, Ari, thanks very much for your amazing discussion about strategy.